Welcome to UX Banter Season 6, where we sit down with design leaders to hear their stories, insights, and what drives their passion for creating better user experiences. This season, we are exploring everything from designing with AI in mind to building trust, navigating industry shifts, and staying inspired in a fast moving field. This podcast is presented by Galaxy UX Studio and powered by Galaxy Publics, an Inc. 5000 company. And I'm your host, Dushyant Kanungo. Welcome to the show. Hey everyone, this is your host Dushyant Kanungo at the UX Banter podcast. Welcome to another episode of the season 6. Our guest today leads with empathy and strategy to shape digital products that truly serve people. In her current role, she brings clarity to complex problems, guiding teams to design experiences that are both intuitive and impactful. With years of leadership across agencies and startups, she has a talent for blending user insights with business needs. Where facilitating workshop or championing research, she helps teams build smarter, human-centered solutions. Please welcome the Director of UX and Research at Fueled, Paige Maguire. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
And as things are, I think it's a very, very challenging and changing landscape which is in front of us. And I really want to know what your journey was to become the leader as you are today, from the as early days as you can tell us about.
Sure. So, like many UX practitioners that I know and many leaders, my path has been circuitous. I started with a philosophy degree studying the humanities and the liberal arts. I went to law school because I was very curious about communication and the way people behave together in societies. And turns out practicing law wasn't, you know, for me. But I do think that my interest in how we communicate with each other and how we work together in a society, has driven my interest in UX. So I started with, content strategy in the early web, around 1998 and 1999. This is sort of showing my age, but when blogging was sort of blowing up and some big brands were starting to get on the web, and I sort of realized this is a communication platform. The internet is, the new way of communicating. And I wanted to learn how to do that and what the best practices would be. So slowly over time, I transitioned from content strategy to more broad digital strategy and then landed in UX. And I've worked on products and services for about 20 years since then.
In multiple mixed methods, they were on the way. So, did you find any connect with the things that you were working on before to what is it that you're practicing? I mean, we are still doing the same lawyering stuff. We are just advocating for our users. And do you think that that sort of a negotiation comes into play while working in the current roles?
I think so. I think so. That's such an astute observation. I think a lot of it is advocacy, right? And so, the same way a lawyer would try to advocate for a client getting the best outcome, I think we do a little bit of that every day. And we're sort of balancing lots of different, influencing factors as well, everything from technical feasibility to stakeholder needs and business goals for whatever company or brand you're working with, as well as, usability and accessibility and things like that. So we're constantly juggling a lot of different things to try to advocate for our users. And in some ways, it could feel a little bit like lawyering.
Yeah, I mean, the term evidence-based design is, I think, is something that we all strive for. And the day we started putting those things together, it has been a little bit easier for UXers. I believe that, the more you talk about that, this is the number, and it is not just a gut feeling that we are offering. And
Right.
that is, if you're any listeners, if you're still not on board with this, listen, we have a lawyer here, and she can tell you all about this, with the value of
Oh,
evidence.
I mean, I'm sure many UXers are listening to this going, like, kind of nodding along, but I am also sure that we wish that there was a jury somewhere or a judge banging a gavel every time we have the evidence and saying, "You're right, we're going to do what you say." Because we still have to do a lot of persuasion, a lot of convincing, and a lot of sort of brokering and, coming up with like the next best solution when we can't get exactly what we want or need out of the technology or the client. So sometimes wish that there was just a yes, the data is there and everybody agrees, but we know it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, but I think it provides us that guardrails that in the end, if something goes wrong, we can always say, I told you so, and the data said so, and then you didn't listen.
That's right. That's right. But we also have to contend with the reality that, humans are irrational, right? And even when we have, now we have years and years of established UI patterns on the web, right? We don't have to reinvent a lot of these things anymore, right? Which is, I mean, changing, right, with AI, and we'll get to that. But like,
Irrational humans.
yes, thank you. Even though we have a lot of UI and UX patterns that we can reference, right, from many years on the web, we know that people still don't always behave the way they have in the past or the way we think they will in the future, right? So there's still this sort of alchemy that happens with what we do. We can lead with data and form hypotheses, right, which is what we do, and still try to think about those edge cases where people may not do what we think they should do or what they sometimes even what they want to do, right?
Right. So research which was conducted on the same age group 10 years ago may not be applicable. And
Right.
that is the beauty of it. The Gen Z and Gen Alpha and the millennials and everybody just fighting together. And yeah, the world is changing so quickly that even just thinking about from the fact that are the older practices still relevant, or are we going to rely on the data models which are predicting everything based on the old data they have, which has been collected over decades? So it doesn't hold the candle with the humans' evolution psychologically and the irrationalities of the human behavior.
Right, right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, data can only tell us what happened in the past. And that can give us a lot of, you know, stuff to work with, to move forward. I'm big on hypotheses, right? So like I use data to give me a hypothesis of what will happen in the future. But you have to leave the room for that irrationality. I've done, field studies before with people in grocery stores where they've been given a task with a certain number of dollars to go gather ingredients for a recipe. And, 8 out of 10 people get distracted and buy some beautiful bar of soap off the end cap and make sacrifices with the recipe in order to like give themselves some little treat. It happens all the time, even when they've been given a very clear task. Um, we just never know.
Well, so if we just hold a pin into that conversation and we'll come back to it, but can we just jump to a few rapid fire questions if you're ready for it?
Sure. As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. So the place you were born,
Portland, Oregon.
beaches or mountains,
Ooh, mountains.
sunrise or sunset.
Sunrise.
So are you a morning person?
I have become one. I didn't used to be. So in my student days, I was a total night owl. I don't know if it's age or becoming a parent, but I do find myself like thinking the clearest and being, the most productive in the morning. And I find myself getting up earlier and earlier the more I age too, which
Books or
is
movies?
probably just a matter of aging, but
No. But you don't look a day older than maybe 30. But so there we are.
I'll
So
take
books or
that.
movies? Books or movies?
Books.
Books. Any recommendations?
Two books that I have read recently, and both that I continue to reference. One is Rick Rubin's The Creative Act, and the other is Rory Sutherland's Alchemy.
Mhm.
And both really great books about creativity and irrationality.
Nice.
and
And
the magic of irrationality.
your favorite holiday destination?
We live in upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains. We're a few hours away from New York City. And we do, even though it is absolutely bonkers, we do love going into the city around Christmas time. And so that's always really fun. And then we also visit family in Texas. Texas is a very nice place to visit. We lived there for a long time. Don't want to live there anymore, but it is a wonderful place to visit for the holidays.
Absolutely. I think New York for Christmas, it sounds something special, and maybe Austin for 4th of July, which is when we are recording
Yes,
it.
yes, happy fourth.
And happy Independence Day to you.
Thank you.
All right. So, your favorite snack?
Apple and peanut butter.
That's nice. A food that you can whip up in at any given point.
Yes. Protein, sweet, savory, love it.
Do you cook?
I love to cook. Yes, I love to cook. So that's a whole different thing. If it's, cooking, I have like a eggplant parmesan that I make that takes like 5 hours, like just pouring love and attention into dozens of slices of eggplant. But yes, I love to cook.
All right. Okay. So coming back, I think we know quite a lot about you. Waking up in the morning, eating healthy, ensuring that the holidays are the time when you get away. You like starry cities and the openness, but you also don't like the heat that much of Texas. That's why you moved to upstate New York. Wow, that's quite a few.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We're best friends now. Where hey, there's nothing left. Yeah.
See, a lot of things can happen over, just asking random questions. Okay,
Yeah.
so while we are coming back to the topic, the whole AI thing, and my question is that it's a quite new in terms of what when leadership faces this sort of a crisis. The technology we have evolved over the last 20-25 years in the industry when we have seen the internet going mainstream, the dot-com bubble burst happened in the start of the century, and now quarter past, we are stepping into another era which some people were saying that it was a bubble, but it turns out that it is here to stay. And from the leadership point of view, as a UX thought leader, running a team, consulting, doing everything, how do you see the change which is happening that has to be adopted with the regular practice within the teams, if I say so?
I think there's sort of two things happening as I see it. One is that there's a bunch of new tools that we can use to do our job, and we're navigating when, how, why, and why not to use some of those tools. And then on the other side, we're also, in this, third paradigm of user interface design, in which we're figuring out how to create AI powered experiences for users, right? That are actually helpful, ethical, easy to use and intuitive and all of those sorts of things. So at Fueled, we're, actively navigating this right now. We're experimenting with different types of tools and learning how it can improve our work. And I think I want to stress, especially those moments and pieces of our process where AI is not the right tool. So when is it uniquely qualified to help us solve a problem and move the work forward? And when is it not the right tool? And can we establish some boundaries and kind of rules around that with each other and for our clients? And then also, just sort of stumbling through this first phase of a new paradigm from a UX perspective means we're you know, learning more and thinking a lot more about things like conversation design, which is challenging my team in all the right ways, I think.
Hmm. And I mean, you have been very successful. I mean, in the past as well, you owned a company. You started an agency in the past, and then you saw it to the end game when you actually it got acquired, and now you have this another thing going on. This people always think about that. Okay, I have a business. What now? Do I scale it up? What is going to happen? And then you were successful in going on to that path of acquisition. How did it all happen? I mean, that seems like that there is a story over there, and then the experiences with today's tools and AI and everything, the experience must be very different with the defining the process and how it is going to go. Do you see any parallels in the growth that happened? Okay, multiple questions here.
Yeah.
The first one is, do you see parallels in growing the organization back in the day and now? And then what was the experience like to, following the compliances and, getting acquired?
Well, we should pause briefly because I wasn't acquired. We just moved on. Um, but I can answer the question still from a perspective of how, like, what was it like to sort of establish processes and new ways of working, like back in the day versus, now at Fueled, if that's still, if that's a good question. So the first question was, do I see any parallels between new processes and ways of working when I was running my own company versus now? Okay. So yeah, I think there are lots of parallels, right? There's sort of a difference in velocity, I think. Back in the day when I was running my own agency with my creative partner, we did everything from, the bookkeeping to the design and delivery with our clients. And so we sort of felt like we were always sprinting. If there was a new tool or something we could try that could help us accelerate or get better results, we did it. And because we were such a small team, we had a handful of people that worked with us, but the entire team there was still smaller than my entire UX team now at Fueled, right? So we were moving fast and trying to be as thoughtful as we could while we did that. And now I think also, I mean, just because of even if we're only thinking about the ethical implications of using AI for UX and research, we have to be very slow and methodical. So we sort of have adopted at Fuel this notion of start slow, but start now. Like what works, what doesn't. And again, like, when we're talking about human insights and understanding and sort of appreciating the ambiguity that comes along with human behavior, we need to be really thoughtful about how and when we use these tools. So we're developing processes as we go.
Hmm. And do you think that, changes is happening all over? Everything is just, you just sit down 1 week and something new comes up. Do you think that there is a definition that can be projected in the future, in the near future, that, okay, we are going to stay for this for a few years with the given synthetic personas, synthetic questions, synthetic users? It's all muddled up, isn't it? But do you see a deadline to it?
And it's so tough to say. I think one of the ways I've been trying to think about it is in broader generalities, because we know specific tools will change so rapidly. So developing our internal sort of point of view around, like, for instance, at Fuel, we will not use synthetic users for research. And we, put our foot down about that. There may come some point in the future where, someone places back to me and I've changed my mind, but I don't foresee that happening. I think nothing can replace talking to real people. And that's a hard stance we've taken at Fuel. Now, do we use AI for other types of research? Absolutely. So what we've tried to do is say, again, what is AI uniquely qualified to help us do? Well, it can synthesize massive amounts of data much faster than we can, right? So we use it a lot for that. We use AI to synthesize user interviews and desk research and things like that, help us develop roadmaps, create test scripts, things that we still review and put our human thoughtful mind against, right? For quality and clarity, but trying to make sure that above all, we're matching AI with those types of activities that it is uniquely qualified to solve.
Great. So how would you keep your team, on the toes of the creative, keep the creative juices flowing? This in these times, everybody is distracted. I've been distracted with the generated fancy images, and now they are at a stage you can say that something is generated. With Veo 3 and the videos, I think it is going into ridiculously different directions. So how would you, motivate and ensure that the new, as in not new, as in the creative spark remains within the team, and everything that comes out is sharply focused and at the edge?
That's a great question. I think I encourage my team to experiment with all kinds of tools, and we do a lot of playing around with AI generated images. And we use Lovable quite frequently, along with Figma Make, to, you know, just kind of see what idea we can see what ideas can be so much faster than we used to be able to. And that's really fun. And I want to encourage that with my team. But I also feel very strongly that, you know, design is more than the act of putting pixels together, right? And great experiences are more than that as well. And so it's important to experiment and learn and play with things, but it's also important to leave that space for the creative act, the sort of magic that happens when we have an idea and come up with novel ways to bring those things to life.
All right. So, with that, I would ask that any advice that you would like to give to our young professionals who are watching the show.
Well, I would say I would encourage everyone to, you know, don't be afraid of AI replacing you, first and foremost. I think there's a lot of work to do around how we use these tools, when they're best suited for the job, and when we really need to rely on our instincts as designers and frankly human beings. Don't let that fear inhibit you from experimenting and learning things, because it can be an assistant to your creative act. It doesn't have to be an inhibitor or replacement to your creative act. And I would also say, to think about UX in particular more in the way that service designers think about their work. We're trying to take a more systems thinking approach to what we're doing as we anticipate agentic AI experiences doing things on our behalf in the future, right? Perhaps proactively and dynamically. It's important to start thinking about these tools as other users in some way. And so thinking about multiple touch points between digital and physical spaces and continuous experience loops, some of which will become automated, presents all kinds of new challenges, right? And it requires us to be more thoughtful than ever. And so it's important to, again, lean into those spaces where being a human is the most important thing, and let the AI help you with the things that it's actually most qualified to do.
I think this advice is not just for young people, that actually applies for mid to senior level
Maybe
design.
so.
Yeah. That's quite amazing. And thank you so much, Paige, for joining us today for this episode. And with that, I would like to thank everybody who has tuned in to watch this on YouTube or listen to it on any other platform. So thanks to you, Paige. And
Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation.
And for everybody else, stay tuned for another episode of the UX Banter podcast. There is a lot more coming your way and a lot more surprises that we are yet to share with our listeners. So stay tuned and have a wonderful day ahead.